Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Brian from Homerun Resources. And we were talking prior to this interview about how the audience in the critical mineral sector even doesn't truly appreciate the value of high-grade silica in the advanced materials market. How about we start there?
Yeah, and that's a really key theme relative to what we're doing because it ties into two major themes that are ongoing in the general markets. One of those is identified as AI, but that AI is really the next level of technology. Silica has a huge role in the development of AI as a material, high purity silica, and also in the energy space as we transition into renewables backed up with batteries. Silica is a key component of both of those as well. So those two major energy and AI themes are super important. And silica is probably one of the, if not the most important material going into those two themes. The key is, and this is really important, Tracy, is that there are a variety of different qualities of silica, and 99.9% of silica will not achieve performance in either of those sectors. So you just throw that whole portion of the inventory out, you focus on the HP, the high purity silica. And to put that into context, the latest Chinese 5-year plan announces that it's focused on high purity silica for the first time. And what are they focused on? They're focused on solar, they're focused on battery, they're focused on silicon carbide, which is really the next generation of silicon, and they're focused on fused silica. And so from that perspective, those are the focuses of Homerun relative to what we can achieve with our material. We didn't copy them. I think they may have copied us because we actually put that out in the public domain before they did, because that plan came out in the first quarter of 2026. But now we see US enterprise and US government doing the exact same thing. So these materials are vogue now. People really don't understand them that well, but to put it into context, solar relative to high purity silica, the silica is the silicon and the silica is the glass, which is very important glass. It's like the highest end of the glass market. And then when you look at photonics and how important photonics is in AI processing, that's glass, generally speaking, and specialty glass. Silica is, and fused silica is a huge component of that. Swing over to quantum computing, which is the future, and you've got the exact same thing, right? You've got glass being a very important component of that. Excuse me. Excuse me, because of the actual movement of light. Movement of light is faster than the movement of data through silicon. So photons versus electrons, not to get too technical, but if you understand what's going on in technology right now, it is photons taking over and reducing the load on electrons. And you need glass materials, and you need advanced materials made from silica in that process. So that's our focus. That's been our focus since day one. We're very, very lucky to have probably the highest purity silica sand deposit on the planet in our control. And so we're evolving that, and you'll see announcements relative to how strategic that material is in the Western world relative to competing with China.
And of course, that is a perfect segue to discuss your number one priority, which is building a solar glass manufacturing plant. Can you tell us how that process is going?
Yeah, it's going really well. We started about 18 months ago, Tracy. We started to focus on getting all of the data and all of the key components ready for getting to the BFS phase. We're now post BFS. Our bankable feasibility study came out in the early part of May. We're now at the subsequent BFS phase, which is doing the permitting, lining up the capital, and also working on what's called the detailed engineering. So those three are ongoing. You'll see announcements over the next 30, 60, 90 days relative to all of those. And that plant will be the first primary solar glass plant built in the Americas. Brazil aligns really nicely because it can compete from a cost perspective with China on solar glass. And our view of solar glass and glass in general, Tracy, is that glass is now becoming a critically important material. It used to just be a passive material. It was keeping the weather out, letting the sun in. And now you're starting to see smart glass in mobile phones and in other use cases. And we're looking at what we would call active glass, where glass becomes a key component in the technology within which it's placed. And you're seeing a lot of that. It's something that Corning's been focused on for over a decade, and they're benefiting from that today. And we're focused on that in other ways and new ways. So you've heard it here first. It's movement from passive glass to active glass, which is literally an industrial transition that nobody's watching, but it's a huge one. And the key to that is you need to have really, really high purity silica in order to produce the glass that can be active glass. And again, we have the highest purity silica sand deposit outside of, well, China doesn't have one. So generally speaking, in the world.
So I would also, I mean, in reviewing your news releases, you have also just recently announced your first order, okay, of high purity industrial silica sand. Can you tell us a little bit more about that announcement that you just put out this earlier this month?
Yeah, since the beginning, we've been focused on the higher margin industry related to our asset. We've been looking for opportunities to utilize the silica sand in the industrial space, the traditional space. We've been approached by several entities, some of which have compelling business propositions, and one of those has been announced, but there are others that are ongoing and in process. And what that means is it's a traditional B2B relationship so that we can stay focused on the higher margin verticals. We're handing off the lower margin verticals, the industrial, traditional industrial, to partnerships where they do everything. So that's easier for us, and it allows our management team, which is very skilled, but obviously not huge, to focus on the verticals that we're focused on, which is obviously taking our silica to higher purity and advanced materials like fused silica and silicon carbide, moving the product into the solar glass facility, uh, and working on the other complementary verticals, including the Enduring System, which is our partnership with the U.S. Department of Energy. And the Enduring Energy Storage System uses high purity silica as a medium of storing energy in the form of heat, and then releases that energy either in the form of heat, industrial heat, or as power through some form of turbine. So we're evolving our business, but if we focused on the industrial space, that would take all of our attention. And no offense to the industrial space, the margins are terrible.
So, in addition to announcing that you've commenced trading on Brazil's B3 stock exchange, your relationship with the Brazilian government is also outstanding based on my understanding. Can you give us an update on that?
Yeah, that's a growing relationship. It was initiated because when the current Brazilian government came out with its sort of industrial mandate, which was a focus on utilizing Brazil's critical materials, and Brazil is a buffet of critical materials. If anybody's been following what's going on, for instance, in rare earth, Brazil is becoming a dominant feedstock player and competitor to China in that space. So the Brazilian government understands their value proposition, and they set out a bunch of deliverables that they were looking for relative to industrialization. And uh, we can happily say that we're still the only company currently in Brazil that ticks all of those boxes. So what that, and you know this, Tracy, what that allows is we get invited to sort of invitation only government situations, whether that's the Brazilian government working with the US government or the Brazilian government working, which actually, by the way, is occurring, the Brazilian government working with the European governments or the European Union generally. So, what that does is it gives a lot of light to Homerun. Even though we're a very small company, we get a lot of attention. And then that transitions into Capital help, because Brazil has a very advanced government-funded industrial development capability through BNDES and FINEP, BNDES being focused on industrial development and FINEP being focused on technology development. And you're going to see some announcements relative to what we're doing in Brazil to really finalize and extend that vertical. And that's working with some other Brazilian entities and also working obviously with the Brazilian government. Brazil presented a tremendous opportunity when we first came across this silica, and we and they are executing together to make sure that that happens.
Brian, you have achieved so many goals. When I just go through the list towards getting this solar glass manufacturing plant built, what are the next milestones that shareholders should be looking forward to?
Capitalization. I mean, it's great to have an idea and it's great to put the plans together for that idea. Let's face it, a bankable feasibility study is just a really, really evolved plan. So from that perspective, what investors need to see is they need to see capitalization of those plans. And we've been working on that in parallel, obviously. That's how we do so much, Tracy, is we don't focus on one thing at a time. We focus on parallel things, and that's my job. So what I did when I started this company was I recognized the verticals, and then I recognized the management structure that was necessary, which was to put standalone management atop each of those verticals, and we've done that. So we have lean and mean and very, very experienced teams across those four verticals, and we execute within that. So we're excited. I would love to reveal who we're chatting with relative to who's in the data room, but that would be offside. But it's pretty exciting. And what I mean by that is it's like raising a child and that child doing really well at something that they're passionate about, and then having some entity related to that child's passion go, oh, we want you because you're really good at what you're doing. And we're in that phase. So it's great to get that validation. I think it's validation that's coming, and that comes from the capital coming in and obviously where the capital's coming from. So the plan is there and it's being validated and it'll get capitalized over the next little while. So that's very exciting.
So, Brian, you're traveling a lot, obviously, and you're putting this solar glass manufacturing plant, getting it to the next level. What question do you wish people would ask you, or what interesting point is happening with Homerun right now that you would love to draw our audience's attention to?
I think it's really important that investors take the time to understand the vertically integrated model. When you're looking at what we're building, this is a pretty aggressive business plan. And so from that perspective, you need to understand what a vertically integrated company is, and then look at how we're doing that across verticals. And the question that I always like to hear is, how does all that synergize, Brian? Like, how do all those things that you're doing individually in those verticals synergize? And it's somewhat like a jigsaw puzzle. When you're down to like the last five, six pieces in the big jigsaw puzzle, you can start to see the big picture. The way we had to do this is we didn't have a jigsaw puzzle, we didn't have a big picture, so we started from scratch. And to see, our energy management system move into commercialization, to see the enduring energy storage system move into commercial pilot, to see the financing coming together relative to the solar glass plant, to see the level of interest strategically in some of the things that we're doing from, real large entities, both on the capital side and obviously the strategic industrial side. That's what's really exciting. And so I think the question is, how does this all come together, and how are you leveraging that to bring in capital and get the validation of the business model? I think it's a big question, but it's a big enterprise that we're building.
You brought up the question, so let me ask you, how do you get this vertical integration coming together so that you can take Homerun to the next level?
It's an ongoing process. There isn't a point that you reach where all of a sudden you're there. It's My focus, and I've been like this my whole business career, is you just execute and you execute on the plan. And if the plan needs to be modified, you modify the plan. That's not Brian Leeners. That's everybody who's been successful. So from that perspective, when you're walking up a mountain, it's one step at a time. And so that's what we're doing. We're taking that one step at a time. The way we're doing that, though, is across verticals. And so the way to do that is to find the team that's going to walk that one step at a time and get those folks to execute on the strategic plan. The strategic plan is really strong. It creates, it creates a tremendously organic synergy across the four verticals at the end of the day. And I could put that into a specific use case or a specific case point. We went out and acquired one of the most advanced perovskite companies in the world. Not only do most people not know what perovskite is, but they couldn't understand why we did that. The reason we did that is because our plan is to build solar glass. Our plan is to build the most premium solar glass in the world. Perovskite needs glass as its substrate. So when you're making a perovskite solar product, this is not technical, you're literally spraying perovskite on glass. So the synergy between making solar glass and bringing perovskite in, that creates a company that is completely across the entire solar vertical because perovskite is currently coming into the solar space as a tandem product sitting on top of silicon solar. But at some point, perovskite, and the Chinese are already there, will be a standalone solar product. So we'll have the solar glass and the perovskite. That's a solar module.
For everybody interested in learning more about Homerun Resources, and Brian, thank you for joining us today. We need follow-up interviews definitely on this topic. Please go to the following website. Thank you, Brian.
Thanks, Tracy.